Hi guys, this is 4.4a and b, which is GCF, greatest common factor, and star factoring. So first thing we're going to talk about is how you factor out the GCF, the greatest common factor. So notice there's no equal signs here. We're just taking an expression and we're factoring something out of it. We're saying what could we divide both or all the parts of something by. So if you look here, number-wise, you have an 8 and a 16. Those are both divisible by 8, so we could factor out an 8. And then we have an x squared and an x. Both of those would be divisible by 1x. So basically you're taking the greatest exponent of your variable and factoring that many of them out. So we would just factor out 1x here. So when we factor out the GCF, your greatest common factor, would be 8x for these two. Okay. Same thing for letter B there. If we're going to factor out the GCF, we're asking ourselves, what are 12 and 16 both divisible by? That would be the biggest number we can divide both of those by is a 4. Then we have a squared and a cubed, and both of those would be divisible by an a squared. So we could take an a squared out of both of those. And then you have a b and a b, so we can factor a b out of both of those, and that would make our greatest common factor for a squared b. Okay, so that's going to come into play with what we're doing in this lesson and lessons to come, actually. Second thing we're going to talk about is, we call it star method, and this is just a way to solve how to factor an expression. This one we're going to talk about this looks like our standard form, right? Ax squared plus bx plus c. And this is going to be for when x equals 1, but we will do it when x equals something greater than 1 as well. You'll see that in just a little bit. But for this first one, we're just going to say x is 1. Okay, so here's our star. You kind of make just this big asterisk. And then what we put in there, up here, we put a times c. So whatever this number is and whatever this number is, we multiply them together and we drop that number in right here. Okay, then our b term, that number is going to go right here in our star. And then these will always be your a. That's this number over here. And then what we're trying to figure out is what goes in place here to give us what this factors out to. So I'm going to show you a lot of these, okay? How we set it up, how we figure out what they factor to. You've maybe learned a different way, and if you've learned a different way at a different school or with a different teacher, you may definitely use your other way that you have learned. But we, as Algebra 2 teachers, have just decided to be consistent with STAR method. So that's what you're going to see from Mrs. Price and myself. I think actually when you get beyond this, Mrs. Pfeiffer actually does it this way too. So, and Ms. Trung for that matter. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to set up a star here. Okay, up top, you take your A, which is 1, and your C, which is 12, and you multiply them together. So 1 times 12 is 12. On bottom, you take your B term, which is 7. And then your A terms are 1 and 1 here. And now here's what you're going to ask yourself, okay? What can I multiply to get 12 that I can add to get 7? Okay, so what two numbers can I multiply to get 12 that if I add them together, right? So multiply and add, I will get 7. Well, if I take a 4 and a 3, if I multiply those, I get 12. If I add them, I get 7. So those are the numbers we're going to work with. And what happens is this turns into two expressions that we're going to multiply. So this number goes in front of your x, which a 1 in front of an x is just x. And this number goes behind your x. So this is x plus 4. And then this one, 1x plus 3. And that is what they would factor to. Notice if I were to FOIL this, first, outer, inner, last, I would get this. So then I know I have the correct answer. Okay, let's try it again. Here's my star. I'm saying, what can I multiply to get 33, right? 1 times 33 would be 33, that I can add to get negative 14. And those are just going to be ones. That's your A term. So what could I multiply to get 33 that I can add to get negative 14? Well, 3 times 11 is 33. But that won't get you a negative 14, it gets you a positive 14, so we need negatives here. So it's going to be a negative 3 and a negative 11. If I multiply those together, I get a positive 33. If I add them together, I get a negative 14. So this would be 1x minus 3, okay, that's this chunk of it, x minus 3, times 1x minus 11, so x minus 11, and that is your answer. Okay, well, let's do another one. So on top, it's going to be 24. On bottom, it's going to be your B term, your 10. Our A still is just a 1, so that's not going to impact anything right now. And we're going to say, what can we multiply to get 24 that we can add to get 10? Okay, sorry, I went out of order here, but I just want to keep moving down the page. So 24, I could do 8 and 3. Well, 8 plus 3 is going to get me 11, not 10, right? I could do 6 and 4, and 6 plus 4 does get me 10. So 6 here and 4 here. I would get x plus 6 and x plus 4. Okay, jump back over to C here. For this one, if we set this up as a star, I have negative 10 on top and 3 on bottom. These will be 1s still because there's no A term out in front. What can I multiply to get negative 10 that I can add to get 3? Well, 2 times 5 is a positive 10, so if I make one of those negative, I would do a positive 5 and a negative 2. If I add those together, I get 3. So my answer is x plus 5 times x minus 2. Okay. All right, jump over here. Letter F. If I set up my star, I'm saying, what can I multiply to get 24 that I can add to get negative 11? Again, these are going to be 1s because we don't have an A term out in front yet. So multiplying to get a positive 24, but adding to get a negative 11. So if I do a negative 8 and a negative 3, okay? The way I always tell people to think through this is just think through all the factors, right? 1 times 24. So 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6, 5 you can't do. Then we get back to 6, which is going to be 6 times 4. So this is all of your options. Now you just need to think through positives and negatives. Are they both positive? Are they both negative? Is one positive and one negative? That will help you get to your numbers for this. So a negative 8 and a negative 3 is going to be x minus 8 and x minus 3. Okay. All right, letter D here. If we set up our star, again, a negative 12 on top, our A is 1, a negative 1 on bottom. So what can I multiply to get a negative 12 that I can add to get a negative 1? And again, 1 times 12, 2 times 6, 3 times 4, 4 times 3 turns us around the other way. So these are your options, but you got to think positive, negative, what would I get? So in order for me to get a negative 1, I'm going to have to use these two, with my 4 being negative and my 3 being positive. So this would be x plus 3 x minus 4, and that is my factored form. Okay, last one of these. What can I multiply to get a negative 5? My a's are still 1, that I can add to get 4. Okay, well, if I do a positive 5 and a negative 1, I will get negative 5 here and 4 here. So this is going to be x plus 5 and x minus 1. Okay. All right. Then we move on to factoring out the GCF first in a problem. So sometimes you're going to be able to factor something out before you actually solve it. If you look here, 2, 24, and 64, those are all divisible by 2. So if I factor out a 2, okay, what I'm left with, basically I'm saying divide by 2, divide by 2, and divide by 2. So what I'm left with is x squared plus 12x plus 32. Okay, now here's what I like to do at this point. Because there's this 2 out in front and it always gets forgotten, I like to write my answer. I know my answer is going to be 2 expressions multiplied by each other, but I don't want to forget that 2 out in front. So write the answer out without numbers filled in, but put that 2 there. Okay, then we make our star. So it's going to be, what can I multiply to get 32, that I can add to get 12. My a term is still 1. So if you think through that, 32, I could do 1 and 32. That's not going to get me 12. I could do 2 and 16. 2 and 16 is not going to get me 12. 3 does not work. 4, I could do 4 and 8, and 4 and 8 does get me 12. So 4 and 8, this would be x plus 4 and x plus 8. Okay, and that way you don't forget the 2 out in front. You don't have to write it down first, but I find it often gets forgotten. Okay. This one, the thing that you can factor out is a negative 1. So if I factor out a negative 1, I'm going to be left with this as my answer. We just don't know what's going to go in its place yet. If I factor out negative 1, I get x squared plus x minus 20. Okay, and if I do star method there, what can you multiply to get a negative 20 that you can add to get 1? And our a term is still 1. So that would be a negative 4 and a positive 5. They multiply to get negative 20. They add to get 1. So this would be x minus 4, and this would be x plus 5. Okay, so sometimes you'll factor out the number out in front first, your GCF, and then solve that way. Okay, example 4. Now we're going to do star method where our a term isn't a 1 anymore, okay? And it's really not much different. The setup will look very similar. You just won't have a 1 in the a place anymore. So here's what you do. You set up your star, okay? Your top number is these two, your a and your c, multiplied together. So 4 times 3 is 12, and then b is 7. And now this is my a term, so that's going to go here and here. Okay, now you ask yourself the question, what can I multiply to get 12 that I can add to get 7? Well, if I multiply 4 and 3, I get 12. If I add them, I get 7, okay? Now here's where it's a little bit different. Think of this kind of like a fraction, right? 4x plus 4. Well, we can reduce that fraction. We want to reduce that fraction. So this is going to be 1 over 1. This one we can't reduce, okay? So now we're going to rewrite this as x plus 1, or 1x plus 1. Okay, that's my left side. And then this one is going to be written as 4x plus 3. And that will be my answer. Okay. All right, let's do it again. This one, set up star method. What can I multiply to get 12? So 12 times 1, what can I multiply to get 12 that I can add to get 7? Okay, very similar to our last one, right? But now my a term is 12. So that's going to go there. Okay. What we're going to do with this is we're going to multiply to get 12, 4, and 3, just like we did on the last one. But again, we can reduce. 12 over 4 is 3 over 1. So we're going to use this as our numbers. And this is 4 over 1. So use this as our numbers. And this is going to be 3x plus 1. And this is going to be 4x plus 1. Okay, and that would be your answer. All right, letter C. We are going to, again, multiply these two, so 12, and now negative 7, so very similar again, but very different still. So what can we multiply to get 12 that we can add to get negative 7? Our a term, remember a goes here and here. Those are both going to be 2. So now it's a negative 7, okay? So I can do two negatives. I can do a negative 4 and a negative 3. But again, if you can reduce that fraction, you need to reduce it. So 2 over negative 4, you want to keep the negative with that bottom number. This would be 1 over negative 2. And this is going to stay put. So this over here is going to be x minus 2. And this one is going to be 2x minus 3. And that will be your answer. One thing to note, I can switch this order. I can call it 2x minus 3 times x minus 2, and that is not a problem. So if they're flipped the order, don't worry about that. That's totally okay. Okay, this one. If I set up my star, I get 3 times negative 12 is a negative 36. And then my b term is a negative 16. My a is 3 and 3 right there. Okay, so what can I multiply to get negative 36 that I can add to get negative 16? And again, you just need to talk through your options. I could do 1 times 36. I could do 2 times 18. I could do 3 times 12. I could do 4 times 9. I could do 6 times 6, right? So I'm looking for what combination of these numbers will get me a negative 36 when I multiply them and a negative 16 when I add them. Well, this isn't going to get me 16. This isn't going to get me 16. This isn't going to get me 16. That's not going to get me 16. So it's got to be this, okay, 2 and 18. It's going to be a negative 18 and a positive 2 to get me those numbers. So we're going to reduce. 3 over negative 18 is 1 over negative 6. So we're going to use this and we're going to use this. So this would be x minus 6 on the left, 3x plus 2 on the right. And again, you can flip those. You can rearrange their order. That's totally fine. Okay. All right, almost there. Couple more, few more, 3 more. This one, if I multiply negative 6 and 4, I get negative 24. My a's are 4. And then my b is 5. So what can I multiply to get a negative 24? Again, 1 times 24, 2 times 12, 3 times 8, 4 times 6. 5 doesn't work, and then we switch the order again. So I'm looking for what combination of these will get me a positive 5. Well, if you look here, a positive 8 and a negative 3 added together gets me 5. Okay, so I'm going to reduce this to 1 over 2. I'm going to use this with this. So this is going to be x plus 2 and 4x minus 3. Okay. All right. Last one puts it all together. Oh, I did just have 2 left. Okay, last one. So for this one, you're going to factor out the GCF first, and then we'll factor it completely. So you got to ask yourself, what can I factor out of 4, 14, and negative 18? I can't factor a 4 out of that. I can factor a 2 out. Okay, so 2 times 2x squared plus 7x minus 9, right? So that means my answer is going to be, don't forget that 2 out in front, it's going to look something like this. Okay, so now we set up star method with this portion, not this portion. Okay, factor out the 2, then do your star. So if I do that, I get 2 times negative 9 is a negative 18. And then 7 for my B term. Okay, you're asking yourself the question, what can I multiply to get negative 18 that I can add to get 7? And right now I have a 2 as my A term. Okay, so 18 I could do 1 times 18, I could do 2 times 9, I could do 3 times 6. In order to get a 7, I'm going to have to use this one. So that's going to be a positive 9 and a negative 2 gets me a positive 7. And then I just need to make sure I reduce this. So this is 1 over negative 1, and this is 2 over 9. So this is going to be 2x plus 9 and x minus 1, and that will be your answer. Okay, so that's the lesson for today. We'll do the rest of this down below on a different day.